Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering if it's over for XRP and it's time for me to sell, or if we're actually at the start of a very important moment before we can see XRP move higher, just like it did back here in 2021. Now that we have seen a new all-time high for Bitcoin and we are starting to see Bitcoin pull back from this high, what we are fast approaching is the moment back from 2021 when we did see XRP start to show some signs of life, and that is what we're going to discuss in today's video, and how I'm personally going to be trading the market if we don't start to see signs of life for XRP and the wider altcoin market. So pretty important video today, guys. Let's jump into it. So there's been a lot of talk about the market cycle being over, and if you're a viewer of the channel, you'll recognize this fractal that we've been tracking here on Bitcoin, which does point to the top of Bitcoin not being in yet, but likely pretty close to actually topping out if we are going to continue to perform like we have in 2021 here, which is where this fractal is pulled. However, if there's a chance that we don't end up performing like we did back in 2021 and topping in a similar fashion, where we did see an alt season at the end of Bitcoin's market cycle, then it's most likely that I will be having to take profits soon on a lot of the altcoin positions that I've been holding over the last 2 years. So obviously I'm still bullish on the market, and I do think this is what comes here next for XRP, and we should start to see structural confirmation of this time period over the next week or two. But before we jump into this, I do just want to start with what's worrying me about the market right now and why there is a lot of fear out there and the bearish sentiment. And the first thing I want to have a look at is the DXY here. And I discussed this a few months ago on the channel, pointing to the fact that every time we've seen a 5-wave move down here on the DXY, followed by this bottoming structure, what we ended up seeing during this bottoming structure on the DXY, which I've marked out here in these purple boxes, was essentially the alt season for crypto. And that right now, if we have a look at the way the DXY reacted in 2021, we did see that 5-wave move to the downside, and what ended up playing out was this double bottom before the DXY ended up moving higher, and essentially this move higher marked the end of the alt season for the crypto market. Now, if we have a look at how things are playing out so far today, we have seen the very clear 5-wave move down on the DXY, and we have seen the double bottom, and it does look like the DXY is making its way out to move higher and starting to mirror the way things played out in 2021, which was essentially after alt season had already played out. So this is one of the things that is worrying me right now, but I don't consider this to be a make or break chart, and that things could play out different this cycle. Another thing to consider is if we have a look at the way that ADA topped back in 2021, what we can see here is that during ADA's market cycle, we did see an extensive run up followed by a small consolidation before one final pop, an extremely fast rejection candle, and then we've seen ADA set one more high before eventually just drifting off and breaking down here, which is very similar to the way that XRP's chart has played out so far during this market cycle, where we have seen that aggressive run up of the lows, a corrective period, one more pop before taking all of that back, a consolidation period before taking out the highs, and then we have just seen XRP sell off slowly and slowly, which is very similar to the way things actually played out on ADA back here in 2021. So this is another thing that has me worried, as we have seen charts perform like this in the past, which then led to a bear market, and essentially there was no recovery from this point for a few years to come. And the one other thing that has me worried right now in the market is, of course, the federal funds rate and how the Dow Jones has been performing. And like stated in previous videos, the last 3 times we have seen the Fed cut rates, we have seen pretty significant corrections in the Dow Jones, which has also led to pretty significant corrections and bear markets in crypto. And now, as we can see in the blue here, we have started to see the Fed funds rate turn over again since the rate cuts back on the 17th of September. And that right now, what I think we are in is the very final stages before we do see a pretty significant size market crash. We've seen 38% crashes, 53% crashes, 37% crashes the last 3 times, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see something of that significance come around this time, now that we are in very similar market conditions again. Combining that with the fact that we have been tracking this chart here on Bitcoin, which is the fractal from the top of 2021, and we are constantly finding similarities here to how Bitcoin ended up topping back in 2021, and that if we are to perform similar to this on today's chart, it would point to the top being in pretty close for Bitcoin, and that if we are roughly in a moment like this here now, or maybe this is the top that we have seen come in here, it does point to the top being pretty close for Bitcoin, and we shouldn't see prices any higher than 130 to about 133,000 for the top of this cycle. And one other bearish concern that I also have is the 4-year cycle theory, which from the highs of 2021 to the highs of today does line us up with about the 6th of October being the top for Bitcoin. And if we have a look at where this top did come in for Bitcoin, it was right here on the 6th of October. So there are definitely some concerns here that have me worried about the state of the market cycle However, one thing I wanted to show you guys, and one thing that's giving me a lot of confidence that we will see positive price action here from XRP in the short term, is actually the way that XRP performed during the exact same time during 2021 when Bitcoin was putting in its top. Now, what we have up here in the top in the blue is XRP's price chart from 2021. And down here is the topping structure that we're talking about here for Bitcoin. And if roughly we're to guesstimate where I think we are so far on today's current price chart for Bitcoin, we are either in this moment right here where we should see one more pump come out of Bitcoin, or we are actually putting in this low right here. Now, what's most exciting about this moment is that what we've seen here for Bitcoin was a little bit of a push before price ended up pushing lower. But during this exact same period, we actually seen XRP start to rally. And that if we are comparing that to today's price chart, we're most likely in a stage like this here for XRP, where we should start to see price rally higher. And that in the coming week or two, if we do see XRP's price push higher here, as we can see Bitcoin sell off, assuming that this is the top and we are putting in the ABC correction, similar to the way that we did back here in 2021 when we'd seen this ABC correction come in here for Bitcoin, which was where we actually seen XRP rally during this period, then it would give me much more confidence moving forward that we are going to see price break to the upside for XRP and an alt season. On top of that, we also have the Bitcoin dominance, which just like 2021 has broken down. We are at this stalling out period and we are looking for that final break in the Bitcoin dominance. And so far on today's chart, we have been stalled out for a while and we are looking for that final break here on the Bitcoin dominance, which does have me pretty bullish on the altcoin market. And one other thing to note here is if Bitcoin does continue to perform like this and act like this fractal that it was during this final stage here where Bitcoin just barely sets another high, that we actually seen XRP go on and rally. And that if we have a look at this chart here and we pull XRP's price down, you can see that during this final rally here for Bitcoin, where it barely just sets a new all-time high, this was essentially when XRP shoots up about 200 and something % during this time period. So what's most important about all of this is that if we start to see similar market conditions actually play out over the course of the next week or so, and that we are in a moment like this for Bitcoin right now, and that we can see XRP's price rally to the upside like it did back in 2021, which could take XRP between $3.30 and $3.50, that it would give me a lot of confidence that we are going to act like 2021, and what comes next is actually the alt season, not just for XRP, but the rest of the cryptocurrency market. Now, one thing that really has me worried is the way that ADA's price played out back here in 2021, which structurally looks a lot similar to the way that XRP has played out today, and that if we do start to see XRP's price continue to break down like ADA did, and we lose this floor here, which on XRP's price chart is about $2.69, where I have this red line marked out, that would make me pretty bearish on the market, and it would start to show more similarities that the market cycle is over here for XRP. So as far as selling my positions, this line in the red here is a pretty important line for me. If I do see daily closes below $2.69, I'll be pretty inclined to sell a fair bit of my XRP position, which is a pretty big deal as I have been holding spot XRP for a few years now and was hoping to sell at much higher prices, but I have to be realistic here and have rules and contingency plans that are in place. Obviously, I have the bullish scenario, which I am most hopeful for and likely expecting here, but there is obviously the bearish scenario where we do just continue to put in lower highs here and eventually we do see XRP break down, lose this support. And essentially that would be it. So this is the bearish scenario, and this is the level if we do see daily closes below here that I would likely sell a lot of my XRP position, not all of it, but a pretty big percentage. So it's actually a really important time in the market right now, because if we don't start to see a bounce on XRP, and if we do start to see Bitcoin break down and not perform like it did back in 2021 here, then my sentiment on the market would turn pretty bearish. But the good thing about all of this is that I do think we roughly are in a moment like this for XRP right now, and that over the course of the next week or two, we will get confirmation on whether XRP's price is going to push up like it did in 2021, or are we going to break down and start to mirror things like ADA here from 2021 when the market cycle was essentially over, and that if we do see XRP roll over and break down here, then again, confirmation of how I am going to be trading the market. So I wanted to make today's video, guys, because there are a lot of things that have me worried here, especially the DXY, especially the way ADA ended up playing out and the structural similarities here that we are seeing on XRP. The Fed funds rate is just a ticking time bomb in my mind, and that at some point we are going to crash. It's just happened too many times in the past to ignore it, and that right now we are just squeezing the very final bit of juice out of this market cycle. However, that is in the past, typically when we've seen the most exciting periods. Again, this right here where the Bitcoin dominance breaks down and we have that very euphoric alt season pretty much started on the 1st of April, which if we have a look back at Bitcoin from 2021 and this period that we're talking about for XRP here, this is the 1st of April right in it. If we can continue to see structural similarities here on Bitcoin and we can see maybe an early signal like XRP pop up in the short term, it would give me much more confidence moving forward and holding on to a lot of my positions. But I just can't ignore the fact that there are a lot of warning signs flashing in the market right now, especially the 4-year cycle theory, which has held up pretty accurate over the last 10 years, which means that it's a very important time here in crypto. I've spent a lot of time looking at charts and analyzing things, staying patient, not getting too caught up in the FOMO out there. And I do think we are in a position like this right now for Bitcoin. However, what's most important to me is actually seeing some price appreciation here in the short term from XRP. And if we can see things get to about $3.30 to $3.50, I'll be much more confident moving forward, not only for XRP, but the rest of the altcoin market. So guys, I hope this didn't freak too many of you out, but at the end of the day, you do have to have a bullish narrative, a bearish narrative, and a contingency plan in case you end up being wrong in both scenarios. And just to briefly touch on my contingency plan, if I do end up getting faked out here and see XRP's price recover, I will just sell at 270 and buy back at 270 if XRP at any point reclaims that level, which I think covers me in all scenarios depending on how price for XRP wants to play out here in the short term. So guys, I'll keep you updated on how all of this ends up playing out. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions about what we discussed in today's video, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one.